thank you for bringing us your film. It's a great honor for us to have the U.S. premiere of the $6 billion man. It's a tremendous honor for us, and we're thrilled to have it. And it's so sort of perfect for this space. We are right between the Capitol and the White House.
Yeah.
And so much of the mischief that and the sort of the power plays that and the trauma that was visited on Julian Assange, all of that sort of came from here. So I think this is like a very important place for this film to be, and so I'm so happy that you're here with it.
Thank you, thank you. You know, when you're with Julian Assange these days, now that he's a free man, which is a bit of a spoiler on the movie if you haven't seen it, but it's life and it's important. When I first came into contact with Julian Assange a decade ago or so or more, I found him, like a lot of people do, is a tough interface. He's got a bit of Asperger's, he's kind of prickly, he's extremely smart, and you feel like he is looking at you with a kind of withering gaze all the time, like everything you say is just vaguely a little dumb compared to what he was thinking.
Yeah.
And in those days, he was hard to interface with. And now, you know, this is no advertisement for prison, but he's a much softer person. He's had a lot of time with himself. And the consequences are there's a real beauty to him right now. Physically, he kind of looks beautiful and he feels beautiful. What he mostly feels is he's like a canvas of the rest of us. You get the feeling that his suffering is your suffering, that he went to the mat for something that was hazy in our minds at the time, but is now vividly clear to us, that the public's right to the truth itself is being profoundly undermined and subverted by those in power who, it turns out, do not believe in the information basis of democracy. They really believe in what Rumsfeld once told us, which was asymmetric information, fancy way of saying, we know and you don't. Go play with your toys. The grown-ups are at the table.
Right.
And Julian saw that in a way that a lot of us didn't, and he especially saw that the digital frontier, the information age, was going to be a whole new kind of battlefield in which everyday people were better armed than ever before to, for example, anonymously share with the world as a whistleblower something you thought the world should know. Before, you had to go in a dark parking garage. All of a sudden, you could do it digitally and with anonymity. That was an incredible threat to the powerful in the early stages of the fascism and information fascism that we're experiencing between these two buildings right now.
When Julian, first came to you, or when you first came to Julian, and he was so different, like in the film you talk about people are talking about him as somebody who's arrogant and kind of difficult, just as you said. And last night at your Q&A, you talked about systems, why people came forward, and you talked about like systems when they break, that break opens a way for some humanity to enter.
Yes.
And it kind of made me wonder whether that was what happened with Julian Assange, that in a way he was broken also, and other things emerged when that happened, and that's the person that you're seeing now.
Yep. Well, there's an interesting, you know how misunderstandings can sometimes illuminate. You can wrongly perceive something and engage in a bunch of behaviors that then teach you something, and the wrong start was kind of helpful. Almost like this happened to me in my life. Where I live in Vermont was a wrong turn. And all of a sudden, this kind of paradise opened up to me that would never have happened if I was not one of those bullheaded guys who, when he's lost, he doesn't ask for directions. I just gun the engine. So I did that and found a special place to me.
Wow.
Now, Julian, in many ways, I think that there is a certain kind of misunderstanding that Julian is a whistleblower. This happens all the time. I get audience questions. A whistleblower. He's not a whistleblower.
Right.
Chelsea Manning is a whistleblower. Daniel Ellsberg is a whistleblower. Reality Winner is a whistleblower. Edward Snowden is a whistleblower. Julian Assange was the granddaddy of all the whistleblowers, because by creating the anonymous Dropbox, which is now not a radical thing, it's in every major newsroom. But at that time, it was a completely radical thing. And the reason they had such a passion to go after him is that if you could stop him, you'd stop a new way that all whistleblowers could, unfortunately for the powerful, reach the public. So he was like the bathtub drain. And so they went after him with special force. And it seems to me that in that way, he represented not just one leak through, we were talking last night that Tony Gilroy, the writer of the Bourne Identity films and stuff, Gilroy has said to me once really beautifully that he loves painting pictures of systems where the walls are built very high, but they've got cracks. And humanity leaks out through the cracks. And that's what, and if you watch his movies, you really see he knows what he's doing. He's doing what he says.
Right.
And I then focused on that in my own work, and I do notice that I find in a documentary context, leakers, people who come to me in the break and say, if you really want to know what's going on here, let's have a coffee. And then all of a sudden, some crazy new storyline opens up.
Right.
And this movie has several of them where something came to me that way. So I became a little bit of a shepherd of leakers. And I had to go through all the ethics of how to portray them, how to protect them, what right does the public have to know certain things. What if I'm told by a court not to share something with the public? I'm relying on the belief that that court is legitimate, but that court could be the plaything of the powerful. I never heard of that. And so the reality is you get into the ethics of the shepherding of the whistleblower, and I think Julian Assange represents that. But in that sense, he's kind of a picture for all of us of the necessary leaking through the cracks of a terribly built machine, which is what we all represent right now. I am aware that I am sitting here being recorded saying we are in fascism. I come from victims of fascism. It is evident to my 92-year-old father that bizarrely the country to which he fled is repeating his childhood times 1,000, turbocharging his childhood. And if we don't say these things, then we're not leaking out through the cracks that are there.
Right.
These cracks are still here until they tear this building down.
Well, they just actually
build a ballroom.
redid it, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Well, yeah. I wanted to ask you about, the story. You mentioned that you first talked to Julian 10 years
Yes,
ago.
yes.
How did your conception of him and the story change in that time? Like, what did you start out thinking you were going to do with this film?
Sure.
And what did you end up with? And how were they different? What was that process like for you as a filmmaker?
Full disclosure, I was first contacted in my life by Julian Assange. I didn't contact him. I vaguely knew who he was when around 2011, he reached out to me because he had been asked questions about international narcotics policy. And I was at that time, I had an active movie out about the drug war. I was a warrior against the drug war. And I had come to note in the UK especially, but also in the US, as someone who had strong feelings and was somewhat versed in the drug war. And he asked me a lot of questions about that. And I liked him.
Right.
And his questions were, he's kind of the person who asks you a question, and by the time you're done informing him, you feel vaguely stupid. So it was exciting for me.
That's
He
a
was
special
wicked
gift.
smart. And that relationship on very particular matters of policy
Yeah.
that I was a source on, the military industrial issues I'd studied, prison industrial issues I'd studied, banking, I became a bit of a source for Julian, not really knowing what kind of hot water I could be getting into. I hadn't really thought about that. And then in 2014 or 15, I was asked to do a kind of TED Talk in Nantucket at the Nantucket Project, that kind of public experience. And I got the great idea that enough was enough and that someone should break Julian Assange out of the Ecuadorian embassy in London. And so I broke him out of the embassy as a hologram. And so he sat full-bodied with me on the island of Nantucket, me at one stool and Julian in the next stool, and I was sitting next to a digital cipher of a man.
Wow.
And I broke him out pixel by pixel, and I thought it was a really radical act.
That is very
I
cool.
asked him at the time, we played an opening video, which was the Star
Wish we had
Wars.
that here.
Yeah, the Star Wars
we had that.
opening crawl, the Rebel Army and blah, 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 blah. We had rewritten that to be the story of WikiLeaks as a rebel army against the Death Star. And I painfully tried to convince Julian to step out and sit down in his stool as Obi-Wan. And he refused. And at that point, I gave up on him. But we did the talk, and it was remarkable because he talked about the digital future. And we were actually in the theater owned by Eric Schmidt, of Google. And so it was a bizarre thing. Julian had just written a book about Google. Google had written a bit about Julian. There was a war of ideas going on, and the hologram fit into that, and Jimmy Fallon made fun of us on the air, and life went on. But I believe that when things got sticky for Julian, which is really to say when the US government's Pentagon Task Force ratcheted up its efforts to destroy Julian, I would be lying if I didn't confess that I drifted from him. Like I had better things to do, and like I didn't know that I could reconcile the complexity of the man and what he may or may not have done. That was all coming to us very, very organized, what I now understand to be propaganda. Back then I would say I probably 10% was affected by that propaganda. So in 2020, when I walked into an art gallery where many, many people I admire, from Ken Loach to Ai Weiwei to Cornel West to Alice Walker and others, were on the walls looking down at me, holding signs in solidarity with Assange, I felt profoundly guilty that I had drunk some Kool-Aid designed for exactly a well-intended whitey like me to kind of buy into, and I had bought that stuff. And I went to his team and said, "Can I help? I see all these kind people doing good things, and I want to be where Ai Weiwei is, and I want to support this in the same way." And they brought me to London in a private room and showed me shattering material about what the U.S. government had done to Julian Assange and was continuing to do. And I thought that needed to come to light. And it was out of my own, I think a little bit out of my own guilt.
That's actually a powerful motivator.
Yeah.
Guilt.
Well, particularly
I think it's actually,
where I come from.
It's underrated guilt, isn't it?
You can use guilt.
Yeah,
used on me.
It's underrated. You talk about just now the footage that you watched, and for me the most kind of shattering scene in the film is when he's trying to sleep, and the security service, which I'm guessing that they were just straight up CIA, right?
The security service is a bit more, and that's what's wonderful about Tony Gilroy's leaking out through the cracks, because a lot of times it's incompetence that causes that. So the group, I don't want to ruin the movie. How many people have seen the movie?
Well, yeah.
No
Okay,
problem.
everybody's seen it.
Good, I'll ruin the movie.
Go ruin it.
So all that security footage, you haven't seen it? Oh, yeah, okay. So, good. So then I can tell you a lot of good stuff. So that security footage, understand that we wouldn't have known about any of this if they hadn't hired a bunch of dumbbells to do this. They hired what you hire, which is like they needed a Spanish firm to come to London to do the security so that they could speak the same language as the Ecuadorians and not bring in some what they thought would be more dum-dum service from Ecuador. So they got some company in Spain to come in, and the guy who was at the company, this guy David Morales, he wasn't like top levels of the security field. He was a wannabe operative. He had all kinds of photos of himself on the wall with like U.S. bazookas. They probably were made of plastic. Like he was a guy who just wanted to get over.
Right.
And he had made friends at conferences, like a wallfly at conferences, getting to know people. Well, that guy ran a completely irrelevant, dum-dum operation full of people who barely knew security at all. So they were liable to leak. They were liable to make mistakes. But then he struck gold. He went to a conference in Vegas and met the security chief of the Las Vegas Sands Casino. That security chief works directly for Sheldon Adelson, the late Sheldon Adelson, Trump's biggest donor, who ended up agreeing with Mike Pompeo, later CIA director, to run a full-time 24/7 surveillance operation against Julian Assange, and they ran it out of the Venetian Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, which Sheldon also owns. Well, this guy Morales met this security chief one night. If you watch Sheldon Adelson arrive at the inauguration, where he's standing on the podium next to Trump, the guy that this dum-dum met at the casino is walking him out. He's not just his security chief, he's like his guy.
The security guy.
So this guy stepped in it. And so all of a sudden he had an operation made of kindergartners, but he was now at the top of the American system, running this surveillance operation, which the moment Trump got elected, moved to Langley. So now all the information that
Okay.
was gathered by Sheldon Adelson, who's just kind of like an evil frog, I'm sorry he's dead, but so be it, live a better life. So because Sheldon Adelson was a bit of an evil frog, he had his tentacles in all kinds of stuff, and one of them was running a full-time operation against Julian Assange, not even for a government, just because he probably was against the kind of revelations against the powerful that Assange represents, the culture of truth that Assange represents. He probably wondered when Assange would work his way around to what Adelson was doing in the world, which is quite significant with Mossad and other stuff. So anyway, he's in the business of stopping the leaks. He's the opposite of Tony Gilroy wanting to see the leaks. He wants to shore up all the leaks. And he hired this dum-dum with his team of dum-dums to do that. And so it was a matter of time before that company then got fired. And believe it or not, even bigger dum-dums took over.
Right.
And when they took over, they found all this material. And they said, whoa, we got a live one here. And they tried to extort money out of WikiLeaks to bury it. When they did that, the guy they met with at WikiLeaks was wearing this phone in his pocket. They were that dumb. They had a meeting about incredibly sensitive material, and they even say to him, are you recording? No, I'm not recording. Whew, good, well, glad we covered that. On we go. So,
Right, and that's when the camera went from this pocket to this
this
pocket,
pocket,
and
yeah.
it kept recording.
yeah.
Right, right,
They're really shrewd.
right.
But the humanity is the key, because that whistleblower, it's like me with the movie. He felt bad about what he had done. He
Yeah.
was motivated to come talk
Right.
to us and to talk to the Spanish courts, more importantly than
Right.
us, by his guilt at how he took a paycheck.
Yeah,
It's the Snowden
Yeah.
thing, how he took a paycheck.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I saw that a little differently, and I'm curious whether it's that you know more than I do, or whether I just have a different take. I took that as the CIA was working, like they have so many companies and things that they use as covers, that I took that as the CIA was sort of working out of the casino.
I'll put it to you
As a
this way,
front.
it's one of these things, we always look for causality, and
Yeah.
very often it's parallelism and correlation. Louis Pasteur said luck favors the prepared mind.
Yeah.
I think the CIA is a prepared mind. So and all centralized intelligence functions this way. My father, he used to watch me if I was trying to date somebody and I was desperately trying to make them like me, or I was trying to get a business deal done or something. He'd kind of knowingly sigh in the corner, and at some point he'd come over to me and say something like, they say, don't just stand there, do something.
Yeah.
My dad would always say, don't just do something, stand there.
Uh-huh.
Well, intelligence services have
That's
known that for
interesting.
centuries. They have understood that if you wait around, stuff
see
will happen,
things, yeah.
and what you want to be able to do is to instrumentalize that. It's far more organic form of conspiracy than did they plant things in the buildings that are going to explode. Far more likely, there are operatives all around. Selective policing of them can yield outcomes we want.
Interesting.
Where we turn a blind eye, it will be exploited, and then we can police it after the fact. A lot of theories about October 7th that function this way as well, and we've seen it from the Reichstag all the way to the Gulf of Tonkin and elsewhere. Things happen, but the prepared mind is ready to instrumentalize them. So it seems to me that there was a Sheldon Adelson component which has a bit of a rogue actor factor in it. I'm sure intelligence operatives were aware of it because Mike Pompeo, who was a congressional candidate supported by Adelson, was already in on this and had aspirations to be at higher levels of intelligence. So yeah, there's a murky world out there that was formless, but had ingredients that could be organized into an effective operation. It happened more that way than an inception by the CIA. We've got this company working for us, call Morales.
Right.
It was more, oh, him again? What's he crop? He met with who? Huh, okay, put a note of that. Anyway, we'll go on.
Right,
And then
okay.
back it comes when
Got
it's
it.
time to come.
Interesting. That's really interesting. I wanted to talk to you about time, because there was a lot of talk here yesterday. I think some of it.
You mean I'm talking too long? This is
No,
where we just
no,
started.
no, not the hour, the other
That's
way around. No, I'm thinking about like time in the big picture, like time.
Time. Okay.
Time. Yeah, Ted Hope was talking yesterday in the distribution panel. A lot of the people on the panel were talking about the need to kind of find a different way to do things from this kind of, always on, fast-paced, AI algorithmic driven life that we lead, and to kind of, the way he put it memorably was slow the fuck down.
Yeah.
You know, just take your time with your stories and
Yeah.
with your distribution and everything. And I just wanted to ask you to talk about time, the role of time in the making of this film for you.
There's an epiphany for me in what you're asking that happened to me as you asked, and I hadn't put this together before, an element from my own life and an element from what's been happening recently. In my own life, I had the great fortune to study with Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist leader and monk who has passed away, and before he left us, I was lucky enough to be at his monastery for a period of time while he was alive. I don't even think I understood how irreplaceably beautiful that fact would turn out to be in my life, but there's some prophetic fragments, to quote Cornel West, there's some prophetic fragments from those conversations that now keep haunting most conversations I have. And one of them, he said, you know, in an emergency such as we are in right now, everybody gets in the lifeboat and everybody's in a panic and they're all trying to do something, blow the whistle, figure out where the life preservers are, start paddling ferociously, scream at the top of their lungs, where's the flare gun, you know, blah, 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 blah. Why does this cell phone work? It's so wet. So if you're the one person in the lifeboat doing nothing, he said, there's going to be a hue and a cry, why aren't you, where's your panic? Don't just stand there, do something
right.
For crying out loud. And he said, what may prove in time is that the person doing nothing in the lifeboat, the person not engaging in the panic of the moment, that person may be providing one of the most seminal features on the lifeboat. It doesn't mean the others don't have value, but with time, it may unfold that that calm, that mindfulness, that pathway for consideration in an emergency may prove to be plenary. It may prove to be where the real thought for salvation lies. He might or she might notice something that the others are too panicked to notice. Okay, so that's been with me, and I keep trying to figure out, am I getting anywhere closer to that person? Because I'm not naturally built that way. I'm like, there's a pitchfork, give it to me, let's storm the Capitol with the pitchfork. Okay, but the doing of less represents in this moment an interesting antidote to the impossible frenzy that has been generated around us. The speed of what Eisenhower called organized finance, concentrated finance, and he called it a scientific technological elite. When Eisenhower warned about the military-industrial complex, in the same speech, please read it, he warns about the danger of that public policy could become the captive, he said, of a scientific technological elite. Mm-hmm. He predicted today, where we've got 4 or 5 scientific technological elite malefactors controlling most of our lives. And in that frenzy of misinformation, chaos, they shock your basic morality, so you're so stunned as a kind of slightly evolved primate that you don't even know how to engage because they've destroyed the usual language of your engagement. It's no surprise that Jane Goodall has left us now, horrible as that is, because Jane Goodall represented the idea that the primate had evolved. I had a discourse with her once about animals, about chimpanzees and people. I had just released my film, Why We Fight, and I interviewed her about humans and chimpanzees on the topic of war. And she said, you should know that what we see, her team had said to me, Dr. Goodall is a primatologist, nothing political. They told me up front, we know about you, Jarecki. We Googled you. Don't bother the scientists with that. I said, yes, I just want to talk about monkeys. Chimps, they corrected me. Oh, sorry, I'm staying corrected. I never said monkey again in the whole thing. But chimps. And I spoke to her, and it was one of the great, beautiful experiences of my life. And she said, when we're talking about chimpanzees and humans in the topic of war, she said, you should know that a chimpanzee, she said, this was the height of Abu Ghraib, and she said, a chimpanzee could never plan to torture anyone. A chimpanzee could never make plans to kill en masse other chimpanzees. She said, that's a decidedly human quality. Wow. And I didn't say anything because her team said, you can't ask her anything about politics. So I just waited, and she said, but at the same time, Eugene, there are no 2 chimpanzees in the world right now talking on an overseas phone line about what it means to be a chimpanzee, how to be a better chimpanzee, how to make things safe for the other chimpanzees and non-chimpanzees. She said that's a decidedly human quality also. She said, so what I would say to you about humans and chimpanzees on the topic of war or anything else, she said so beautifully, while our bads are worse, equally too our goods are better.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, I want to be good enough at anything one day to be able to summarize it with that kind of mic drop. And what it takes me to when we look at the situation right now is we are looking at a seminal moment where we must engage in our better faculties. And one of our better faculties, indeed one of the defining ones, if you read Sapiens by Harari or others, is our capacity for empathetic, often mythologized story making, the caring about the story, the caring about the meaning of it. And these guys are assaulting the very basis of our beliefs, the very basis that we believed that democracy was a step forward in the long history of our ascent from the caves to the stars, as Reagan said. Not to quote Reagan necessarily, but he did say it. And the truth is, on that path, Martin Luther King said the long arc of history bends toward justice. This is the first time where people are assaulting that that's the path. They are trying to move us back. I keep doing Google searches on the medieval and the Enlightenment, the medieval and the Renaissance. I keep trying to understand, why are we having what appears to be the dawn of another medieval era? And in that medieval risk, we have an opportunity not to try to keep up with the Joneses and do the next social media and the next thing, but actually to take ourselves a bit off the grid, which is where they would most fear us.
To be sort of the quiet
The system
one.
does not fear us on our phones. The system fears, why are they not on their phone? What can possibly be stirring? And I'm as guilty of this as anybody else, because the distribution of my film and the management of my complicated life with the film, that's all on the damn technologies. So they have us. They will begin to fear us when we're in the boat appearing to do nothing, which in the digital space would be to not work within their URLs, their grid, their electricity production, and something else. And that keeps happening. When those hilarious frog costumes emerged in Oregon, we all got it. We all got, this is an amazingly clever way of responding to ICE, is to put people in children's costumes to make them arrest them. There is a French guy in France, and I have an idea to do this here. I'm on the fence about whether it's the right idea, but there is a guy, I've seen it firsthand. I'm at a cafe, and the French, when they go militaristic, I'm living in Germany, the same thing there, it's terrifying. Because they have like serious stormtrooper outfits with like flared Darth Vader helmets that are supposedly so nobody bunks them on the neck. But they're the French and the Germans. They both have this flared helmet thing with their multi-layered stormtrooper outfits. It's terrifying. And if you get hit by the German cops, which I have been, they hit you with a line of men who are arm in arm. So it's 20 men's
like
physical.
A human
it's
tank.
like a tank. And it's not to be played with. It's ICE times organization. It's ICE with a plan. It's not ICE like a bunch of brown ICE is scary enough. It's one of the scariest things I ever thought I'd see in America. But over there, it's like plus the Holocaust. It's something else. And there's a guy in Paris who every time they go by, he follows them. Maybe you've seen this. He follows them with a bugle going bam, 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 bam. So they cannot go anywhere without the Darth Vader theme song. So I think we should have a bugle corps in America that does that with
That's really
us.
interesting. I like
But
that idea.
it might have the wrong message here. We have to
I'm
see.
going to ask you about time again, but in a more personal way. You talked about, well, how many of you were there for the Q&A last night? Okay, most of you. So Eugene talked for a second about.
I was really proud that people stayed for the Q&A. I was like,
Me too.
It's late at night.
We gave them
Everybody
cookies
should go
after.
home.
We gave them cookies.
Very touched.
Yeah. So he was asked about the very last shot in the film, which is Julian standing by the beach, and he doesn't ask him anything. It's just a shot of Julian standing by the beach, which is really a beautiful way to end the film. And you talked about your team telling you, don't go all the way there and not ask him a question.
Right.
And so just if you could tell, for the people who weren't there last night, how you made that decision. But my question is also, would you have made that same decision 20 years ago? Like, is this a decision that it took you reaching this age and having the experiences you've had until now to make that decision?
Right. I mean, you might as well be my therapist. I mean, the truth is that, yeah, I have learned as I've gotten somewhat tragically older that I used to say all the quiet parts out loud in my love life, my family life, in my movies. I wanted you to know it. I wanted to say it. If I had it, it feels like some sort of obscuring of the truth or withholding or something if I don't say it. I'll give you a funny example of this. There's a book I would recommend people read, which I really, really love, and it's hilariously named 101 Things I Learned at Architecture School. There's also a film version, 101 Things I Learned in Film School, and film people will tell you, hey, almost everything in that book is like good. You read it, it's like a single little page, little thing. I mean, it's really brilliant. But for my filmmaking, the architecture book has been more formative. 101 Things I Learned at Architecture School. And one of the things they say is that when you look at architectural handwriting, the way architects write, which is a somewhat standardized form of handwriting that you look at on a plan and you go, ooh, an architect drew this. It's uplifting to look at, even if the building is crap. It's uplifting because of one feature, which is that the architectural lettering, by design, it points upward. So an E isn't, like my E in my name is not an E with 3 straight lines or your double exposure ending. The top two, the ones that go up, they point up a little bit. And if you look at how they're up, they bring you to an expectation. So my favorite movie title is the Jamaican Jimmy Cliff movie, The Harder They Come, because the mind fills in the harder they fall.
Right.
So you're already having a conversation with the filmmaker. So instead of giving the name a movie that answers something, it asks something. I have a moment in the movie that happens where somebody, this anonymous person, calls Julian's Spanish lawyer and says, are you by a computer? Go look up this company, UC Global, the one with the dum-dums. Go look up this company, UC Global. Now go down their website. Do you see Las Vegas Sands Casino Corporation? And then the guy, for 4 years of editing, the guy on the phone says to him, the spying operation inside the embassy, it was not Ecuador, it was US. And I always loved that his English was wrong. Like, he didn't say it was the US, right. It was US. And I knew that's one of those lines from one of my movies that people are gonna quote back to me. It was not Ecuador, it was US. It was so cool. I was like in love with the sound of that line. It's not in the movie now. Because at one point, just on a lark, because of that letter E and not answering the E, I went in and I cut it was US. I cut my biggest, it was one of my best darlings because it sounded like a spy movie.
Your baby.
Right, so now he says, the spying operation inside the embassy, it was not Ecuador. Now the audience is, well then, and if you answer that right away, they can go get popcorn because they've already had the story point. Right. If you don't answer that right away, they're not getting popcorn.
Right.
And that has been a learning in my whole life. Not very in evidence today because I'm blathering on, but it's an opportunity to tell. But I should just go, you think, why did he stop talking? Right. Is he having a stroke? Or is there something there?
Right.
That's already effective. My dad, again, a great teacher for me, he's 92 now. He was once trying to teach me something about negotiation, and this kind of goes to everything, and it's about movie making, it's about life. It's not necessarily a good thing to say, because it's pretty dark. But we were on a call, and he was trying to traffic in this, how much to say and when to withhold. For a person he knew is for whatever set of psychological reasons I have, very communicative. And he said, if you're on a phone call with somebody, at a certain point, you should just try to sort of like pause for a second and
see what comes out.
And I said, hello? And he said, yes. What you'll find is that the first person who speaks needs the call to continue.
Wow.
And he's a business person, so I was like, taking notes. Because that's a terrifying logic, that a pause will be filled by the party who's the beta, not the alpha. The alpha, if there's a silence, he's got stuff to do. Hang up, move on. They'll call me when they need me. I don't need them. And so it's a horrible version of this.
Power play.
It's a power play version of what I couldn't take that on because I'm not that person, but I have learned the less is more sometimes in what you, for example, with this movie, I'm going to tee the movie up where the public is needed to join the distribution model. And I have done that before to some successful degree, but it'll be more than necessary now because the existing structure for distributing movies like this has been obliterated.
Right.
There's no real movie business to speak of. And so great reckonings in little rooms like this are the only way that this will travel from the grassroots up. And if you want that, you got to shut the fuck up and let people in.
Right. That's actually something that reporters experience every time we do an interview, that, you know, sometimes you just be comfortable with the silence because that's when people will come forward. So what was the answer actually to the question that I asked you?
Have I with time become more able to pull back? And I think as a human, I'm learning that. And the movies have become a bit of a canvas on which I'm doing my first childish sketches of what it would be like to do that. And I didn't ask Julian the put the microphone in your face question because I thought the pregnancy of the question of what you'd want to ask him was better for you to leave the movie with than to take a person who has PTSD, he's been in jail for all that time, and now you go, hey, Mr. Assange, what were the meals like? Right. You know, what was it like to be with all those criminals? Like, it just was crass in every way, and I thought he owes us nothing. He's done his part for humanity. He should have time with his kids now and not have to worry whether he's coming across well out of all these years of incarceration. And I thought it would be poetically powerful for the public to have to lean in and wait and wonder. And I knew that the moment he got out of jail. And I told my team, I can see you all sharpening your travel sabers to go and interview this guy. I'm not going to want to interview him.
I'm not going to do it that way.
I don't see art in that. That seems like reportage and some sort of gotcha journalism that's either getting him or getting his adversaries, and I don't think that's the poetic end of the tale.
No, it's a beautiful ending, and I think, you know, the whole, for me, the genius of the film is that it, you know, it turns the lens and actually says, you know, this is not about the victim of what happened. This is really about the system that did it.
By the way, my team is worried about something about the ending that I wouldn't mind focus grouping you all. Did you notice that in the theater last night, the ending starts and the lights come on in the house? They start turning on the lights and people start leaving because they get the sense there's a credit sequence. But the entire victory of Julian Assange happens during the credits.
Yes.
So my team was like, take it out of the credits, don't do the credits. But I'm like, it's a long movie. I want to let people know they can start to go home now. And they're going to see that he's walking toward an airplane. Certainly, even if they're grabbing their jacket, they're going to see that. If they're ready to leave when Julian Assange is finally free, I've failed on some deeper level. Right. So I think they're going to stay, but I did, and people did stay last night, but it's festivals, opening night, nice theater, good popcorn. So the real question could be, is that ending faultily designed? Does it make you think it's over and then it's not over and it's confusing? Or does it make you think it's over, then it's not, and it delivers a really good thing? Did anybody have a feeling on that? Because I was watching last night, and when the lights came on, I was like, oh, why are they doing that? But then everybody stayed, yeah. Right.
Something important, don't start the credits, but
okay.
And also these streaming services that are horrible. You're trying to find
They start putting on another movie, right?
disguise it, and you got to find the button to.
Yep, okay.
Anyway, you don't want to cater to that.
Understood, yes? And then here.
And if you're not engaged in the credits, you may miss it totally.
Okay. There you
Well, I think you're fine because we're in an age where we're used to seeing additional scenes after the credits, and some people that sit through the credits like I do, that's a nugget for them. But I did get thrown off because I went to the bathroom because it is a long film. So I think you should keep it the way it is because it gives people a moment to take a breath. It's very condensed. It's a very serious and heavy story.
Yeah.
I think it gives you opportunity to stand up and you can always go back to it. So I'm gonna side with you.
Okay, by the way that we think it will likely reach most people is in 3 parts. It's designed in 3 parts.
Right.
How it all began, A Safe Place, and the delivery of Julian Assange. And really neatly, they're all 43 minutes long. So the good news is the intensity of a single viewing of it, which I've no doubt is intense, it's perfect when you watch it in 3 parts. You watch it, you're like, wow, I know a lot now. Good. Yeah, I'll watch again. And then each one feels very bite-sized.
Right.
In its fullness, it's hard. But I have to look at it when we now break it up into 3, like German television just came on board, and they want to show it in 3 parts. I think Russia, I think other countries are going to want this. My guess is it's going to be a large part of our release. I'll probably change that last part a little bit, or I may not feel as worried because you're not so ready to go
Right.
home because it was just 40 minutes. You're not like, oh, I got to
Right.
get the kids to bed, you know.
Yeah. Well, with that, I think we have probably gone over. I want to
That's
apologize
the whole risk of
for
taking
that,
time, you
But
see,
yeah,
that's, yeah.
but you know what? This was worth it.
All right.
I'm so glad that we had this conversation.
Thank you. Well, it's great to be here. And I really do want to again thank Diana and her team. This group has been, she asked me this morning, why did you choose double exposure for your premiere? You could have chosen this or you could have chosen that, whatever. It's come to light for anybody in the documentary space how serious and committed this group is to what we do and to the extreme importance of support for what my colleagues and I do in this space, what all of us are concerned with. This is obviously establishing itself as a place of utmost seriousness and care. And what we hadn't expected was what a warm and familial operation it is. People have been super caring about our role here. So I'm delighted that we did choose it this way. So
I'm so
thank you again.
thankful. I'm honored and thank you.